Sheena, I understand you're doing some pretty good stuff over there. You wrote an article, very interesting article, by the way, regarding a couple big brands, but I'm going to let you spoil the news, quite literally. It's your spoiler alert, all right?
Sure. Thank you for having me. So I wrote an article this weekend, kind of being inspired by the work that we do at Footwear News about brands specifically, and then finally seeing them step up in a really significant way in terms of their messaging. So Nike put out a video on Friday supporting Black Lives Matter, sending a very strong message of just don't do it. Just don't ignore racism. Don't ignore police brutality. I mean, this was kind of on brand for Nike, if you will. This is the brand that threw support behind Colin Kaepernick when he was really ostracized from the NFL for taking a stand for Black Lives Matter. Nike has also supported that movement back in 2016. So that was special, but also sort of expected. We saw something a little unexpected after that, which is Adidas, longtime competitor of Nike. I mean, staunch competitors, couldn't dislike each other more in a business way. We saw Adidas retweet that video and kind of add its own message of support for fighting against racial injustice and racism and police brutality. I thought that that was such a significant sign that things are going in the right direction. It really, I think, means a lot to the Black community that brands that have long really benefited from the Black dollar and been inspired by culture in that community are finally are stepping up to collaborate and lock arms to support the community. Obviously, people want to see action as well, but I think it's a really important first step.
Now, I think it's so important. Okay. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, first of all, I was going to say thank you, Sheena, for bringing this to our awareness. I don't really follow either one of them on Twitter, so I would have never seen it personally. However, this is why I always talk about social media doing good, right? And if you use it for that means, Melissa, I know you are in the retail sector quite often, and you brought this story and, of course, Sheena to us. What were your first thoughts when you read it? And then, of course, whatever else you wanted to say.
I thought it was powerful. I mean, I think that it shows that this isn't a moment about being competitors. This is all coming together in a common message that we all stand behind. And I think that was really powerful. And I do think that most people who know the brands know that they're competitors. So it's about collaboration, not competition. It's about joining in unity. And I think that's the overall message that's coming out today. And so I think it was really powerful. It set the tone, and I think it encouraged others, right? You always have to have those few that are willing to take the first steps, and they were willing to take those first steps, which is really, really powerful. And I also think, you see a changing tide right now. There's for years been so much kind of just controversy. Is it a brand's place to have to make a stance and to have a message, and is it appropriate, not appropriate? And I think we got past that. It is important to take a stance. It represents that you have compassion and you care, and these are your customers, these are your employees. This affects everybody. So I think it started the wave, and we've continued to see a lot of brands follow since.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, Melissa, because it is true on both sides of the aisle. And here's what I mean by saying that. Obviously, you've got those that have to enforce safety among the people, right? You have those that are hired, and then they put their lives out there on the front line, quite literally, that no matter what goes on, they have to at least try to keep people safe. Even the National Guard, even police officers, even others on the opposite side, which are always thrown off to the opposite side, have either knelt down in support of. I just saw recently where some put down their actual shields to show that they themselves personally also agree with the bad that is done in their own ranks. Is that basically what we're all saying?
I think there's so many opinions about that. And without getting specific in different scenarios, I would say I think the greater message is everybody saying this is not okay on every level, whether it's within police departments, whether it's in the streets, where in any level, it's not okay. And we're not going to be silent about it. And we're going to be supportive about it. Whether we wear the shield or we don't, we all agree this is unacceptable.
Right.
And I think that that's the important message. And I think what's also important is, there's putting up a post and writing a message is only the first step.
Yes.
So the other thing that we're starting to see an important wave of in the past few days is brands doing more than just making a statement. They're putting money behind real causes, and then they're making really solid commitments. Rent the Runway announced they're putting $1 million towards Black designers. Glossier, I think, is $2 million. Sheena, we were speaking about H&M.
H&M, 500,000. We saw Aldo today bailing out protesters that are demonstrating. So I think there's I think they're listening a lot more. So I think the first step was, like Melissa said, the brand messaging and saying in no uncertain terms where they stand. We were talking about this earlier, Melissa and I, that 5 years ago, you might see a brand put out a message around, the importance of diversity, and you had to kind of make an inference if there was a current event happening, that maybe they're saying that they support a certain movement or a certain thing, but you never were quite sure. I think that there's something to be said for really being very explicit in naming the people affected. I think the community has been saying for years, say their names. You've got big brands like Nike writing the name Ahmaud Arbery or Breonna Taylor, and obviously George Floyd. So I think that's a critical first step, but also they're hearing people say, that's great, now what's next? And so I think that we're moving into the next important phase, which is financial support, and then the next phase, or I think a concurrent phase, will be kind of what are you doing internally to support your employees? What do your numbers look like? You say Black Lives Matter, do they matter within your corporation? And so we've seen brands more and more being taken to task to kind of, divulge what their internal makeup is around diversity. So I think these are all great things happening, and great to see the brands kind of getting on board in a bigger way.
Yeah, and look, I agree 100%. I just saw recently, I think Verizon even made a statement quite recently, and I'm going to just read that because it just came up. Social justice is core to who we are as Verizon Media. The racial inequality, violence, and oppression against the Black community must stop now. Our brand purpose is to move the world forward. We are committed to helping ensure we move it forward for everyone. #forward together. At what point does it become one of which people say, you know what, you're just trying to collect more dollars, or you really do care about us? Sheena, I'm going to let you answer that one.
Sure. One of the things I said in the article, and something that I always say, I don't think that we will ever really know to what extent it is a sincere effort to support communities and to what extent it is about the bottom line. I mean, what we do know is corporations exist to, primarily to create shareholder value, produce revenues and profits. So they kind of have to do that, and they have to at all times think about the impact of their messages around the bottom line. However, I think that we have to also keep in mind that these corporations are comprised of people. And I think there are a lot of people within these companies that really, really do care. I've had conversations with, people at Nike, and I know that the message that they put out on Friday was kind of hugely generated by the Black talent at the brand. So I think that keeping that in mind, I think helps us to stay positive about what we see and not, not be cynical about the messaging of brands. We know they have to make money. That's a given. But I think that if I think the intentions are good, we'll never know to what extent it is a little bit of profit and a little bit of, true support. It's always, I think, a few of those things happening.
Yeah, and Melissa, I know you've got a take on this because we always talk about business. In order for businesses to stay in business, they need to be making an income. They need to be financially doing well. Marketing is a huge part of that. Branding is as well. But what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I hope, I don't think anybody sees this as a marketing moment, but I do think they see it as a brand message moment. And, we've been talking more and more that people don't buy just products and services. They buy into a brand, into their beliefs, into their values, into what they stand for. And so that's the side that this is about. And I think that, nobody knows the right message to put out for sure. But it's that the message isn't just a post that lives for a day. It's really ingrained into the core values of the company. And it's something that they move forward with this year, next year, and the year after. And that's kind of where we're going to start to see change. And, you know, I think that there's different ways that it's appropriate for different brands to do it. I think it's super important we don't make judgments around the way they do it. I think that that inhibits it inhibits the movement that people want to make to do something. But it does take more than just words. So I think we're still in early stages, and I think more is going to come out of people find their ways and probably have to have internal votes and everything like that. But to your point, Sheena, I think it's important that they're also looking towards the right voices internally to have a say to help shape what that looks like going forward.
And if I can add to what you just said, Melissa, around the marketing message, it also gives consumers something to hold a brand accountable to. And I think they didn't have that before this for a lot of brands, that if you say Black Lives Matter, and like you said, Melissa, down the road, there's a moment, we actually have a tangible thing to hold you accountable to. You said Black Lives Matter. 5 years later, you're doing something that doesn't demonstrate that. We can hold you accountable to the message that you put out. So I think message is hugely important in that way.
In other words, carry out what side you take, right? Like, don't. I'm sorry, Melissa. Go ahead.
No, yeah, I was agreeing with you, Aaron. A key example that happened a few days ago is that Disney made a statement. They tweeted back, "Open your purse, Mickey Mouse," and a lot of people made comments about it. And those, you know, but to your point, if they're gonna put it out there now. People are gonna hold you accountable.
Yeah, very good. Okay, well, we've run out of time for this segment, but Sheena, obviously, you're doing a lot more over there at Footwear News, .com, by the way, footwearnews.com. So I imagine I can get a lot of news about the apparel industry when it comes to shoes. Is that right?
Yes, 100%. This should be in your saved browser in the morning every day. You should be on footwearnews.com to make the decisions of what's on your feet.
All right, so there you go. And if I can just plug this really quick, if you have the in with the Nike brand, can we just say, just do the right thing? I think if we can just like implement that, that's all right. Well, I'll take credit for it.
I'll send it along. I'll send it along.
Please do. Yeah, just do the right thing. I mean, seriously, if they do that, that'd be great. Okay, we'll go ahead and take a quick break here on the morning show. Don't forget to follow Melissa as well. Melissa Gonzalez over there at the Lionesque Group, where she helps businesses go the next level and or refine what they're already doing. Okay, people, we got to take a quick break. We'll be right back right after these messages. Stay tuned.